one, and welcome back to Gutzler Man. I have decided to take a drive around the block, and so most of the time, I'm gonna just be watching where I'm driving, right? So I won't probably be looking at the camera very much, but this is a video on dealing with bad news. And I know it's really not a good subject to talk about, like a lot of subject nowadays, but it's a subject that needs to be talked about. And everybody suffers from bad news. It doesn't matter who you are, what your skin color is, how much money you have in your wallet, or even if you're tall, short, skinny, overweight, smart, and special needs. It doesn't matter. Bad news follows every single person. And a lot of times there's some bad news that we deal with, and there's other bad news that I described it as being stuck in a bubble of not really knowing what to do with. So I'm kind of going to give you an overview of what's been happening in my life over the past 2 years to kind of give you an idea of my bad news. And then we're going to go into some Bible verses that discusses what to do with those bad news. So again, this is not a video about me. So I am going to skip over things and just kind of give you basic information, and it's probably what you want anyway, because this is more about listening to what God tells us to do about bad news, because He knows that bad news is going to follow us no matter who we are, no matter where we go. We can even go to the four corners of the earth and be out of reach from every single living human being known to man, but we're still going to encounter bad news even in those locations. So let's just jump right in. That start in 2020, when the job I had in 2020, I was in charge of a classroom dealing with individuals with autism. And I was sort of the teacher, if that's the way you want to say it. I was the teacher of this classroom, and I assigned certain individuals with other individuals that needed special needs. So to make a long story short, I was in charge of making executive decisions. I've always been kind of slow on making executive decisions. Not that I didn't do them, I just needed some extra time to think about what I was going to do as a strategy. This particular job kind of forced me to make, like, hey, we need an answer and we need it now type of thing. Dealing with the military, I wasn't really shocked about that. I was more shocked about the fact that I had to make split decisions, and I knew something was wrong because I would start to feel anxiety. I would have negative thoughts about things, and I would get to a point to where my memory it wasn't serving me the way that it should. And I don't mean where did I leave the car keys type of memory. I mean certain memory, like my supervisors would describe something to me, and then when I would actually go into the project, which would probably be within an hour or two after my supervisors talked to me, I would forget everything the supervisor said. I would have, some said it was test anxiety. When I was faced with the situation, I froze up. But I started seeing a pattern on this, and I knew that it wasn't normal. So we're going to kind of go into 2021 now. Based on those experiences, I did a little research, kind of looked things up, and I found, again, I'm no medical doctor, but I found on the internet by going to, what does it mean when you forget more than the usual person, or Google what does it mean when someone explains something to you and then you automatically forget when you're actually faced on something to do with that. And I found that patients that have suffered strokes in the past might be experiencing these same symptoms. So I kind of thought that maybe I had a stroke in the past, a light stroke. I also found out that you could have had a light stroke in the past and not even know it. So I wanted to get a MRI done on my brain to try to figure this out. I wanted to get an MRI done, and I tried to shoot for that. So, you know, the next few months I dealt with insurance companies. I dealt with my doctor. I found out that my insurance company said I couldn't request it. My family doctor had to request it. So dealing with that, we got one thing led to another, and I actually got my MRI. And in my MRI, they brought me with good news and bad news. And the doctor said, well, the good news is that you do not show any signs of having a pre-stroke, because in stroke victims, when you get an MRI done, the brain shows lesions on the brain, as they said in layman terms, they're kind of like whited out areas, sort of like someone took a white out or a white pen or something and colored these areas white, and my brain looks healthy. Now the bad news that they brought me is that I had a pea-sized tumor at the end of my left ear. Now this pea-sized tumor happens to be setting on a vein going from my ear to my brain. It starts with a V. I forgot what it's called. Anyway, it's the main hearing. It's hearing for my left ear. So I have had hearing tests done, part of this, trying to get MRIs covered by insurance. I had to go get a hearing test done, and they did notice a hearing loss in my left ear. This pea-sized tumor also is up against, not setting on, but up against another vein that is going near that's connected to my brain, that's involved in the muscles of the left side of my face. And I have been told in the past that when I get sick or when I get tired, some parts of my face kind of droop more than normal. And that could be because of that pea-sized tumor that's kind of setting against it. So they had me going for another MRI just to see if what they were seeing was not a mistake, and that showed the tumor as well. So they set up a time, and now that's fast forward to 2022. So 2022, I go to the doctor and I get into information, on what I have to do with the surgery, what I have to eat, what I can't eat the night before, type of thing. There's a special shampoo, since they'll be cutting into my head to get to this tumor. I had to do a special shampoo in my hair. I had to go in for that. So to make a long story short on that, I just received information that within the last couple days that my surgery was canceled due to an outrageously amount of COVID case, and there isn't enough doctors to supply my surgery. So my surgery was canceled for that day, but postponed for a later time. At this time, I don't have a later date. So I know one of my last messages, I said that I could be out for a while. Well, that's not going to be right now. It's going to be at a later time. So all that kind of was over the course of over the last 2 years, starting back in 2020. So that's kind of been like bad news after bad news after bad news after bad news in my court. And I just really didn't know how to start dealing with it. So I turned to the Bible. And there's been some Bible verses that I've been trying to pull out about how to deal with bad news. And I figured I would do today's video on that, because I know bad news is not just a me thing. It's not just a every once in a while thing. Bad news is almost every day. There's some, like I said, there's some bad news that you can handle. There's other bad news that you don't even know what to do with. So today's video is going to be about how to deal with those bad news, some of the Bible verses that I pulled out, and some of the Bible verses that has helped me deal with it. So let's jump right in.
Wow, it's just absolutely amazing when you really dig in the Bible about what the Bible says about bad news. You come across a lot of verses. And here, it's really tough for me to condense the verses that I've went through over the past 24 months plus and really condense them down to 3 or 4 or 5 or 6, because each verse is just as good as the next, and there's not really one verse that's better than another because they all have meaning behind them. However, I've taken 2 verses from Romans and 1 from Deuteronomy, and I brought those out because I believe that they may have meaning, helpful meanings that will try to help someone work through their bad news. The first one that I'm going to read is from Romans 3 verse 23, and I'm using Bible Gateway app, and I'm using the 21st Century King James Version of the Bible. This verse says, "For all have sinned and come short of the glory of God." And when you pull that verse out, it may be sort of controversial because it is really saying that we have all sinned from the fall of man until today and come short of the glory of God. So anyone that has ever breathed an ounce of breath on this planet has fallen short of the glory of God. So I know that in my own situation of the tumor, I'm not saying that the tumor was because I've fallen short. I'm just saying that I'm not going to be my whole life of perfect. I am the same as everyone else, and every sin and every illness and every bad news that could possibly happen, I'm just as susceptible to it as anyone else is. And I believe that that's the first thing that I had to realize. The second verse that I would like to read is going to be from Deuteronomy. And let me get this up here real quick. This is Deuteronomy 7. And it's going to be verse 15. Deuteronomy 7, verse 15. And this says, "And the Lord will take away from thee all sickness, and will put none of the evil disease of Egypt which thou knowest upon thee, but will lay them upon those who hate thee." And this is a verse that I picked because the Lord does have the power to take away all the sickness and all the diseases of Egypt, which we know about. I mean, we're going through one right now, a sickness that everyone's getting. And have you ever noticed that some people just seem like they don't? I mean, it just seems like when you look at a Christian, another way of putting it, a better way, I believe, when you look at a Christian and you just see things that are going in their life, I know that they're just a human being and they go through hardship. But no matter what they go through, they're always happy. And they're always preaching about love and understanding. And that is because they have the Lord Jesus in their life. And the Lord does have the power to take away sickness from people and all these diseases that we know about. And he also has the power to not help those, the last part of that, but will lay them upon all those who hate thee. And when you hate something, you tend not to study it, go around it. You really don't really want to have anything to do with it. So if a person chooses not to get help and not ask for it, then they're the ones that really suffer because they really don't know what the help of God really is. The last verse that I want to bring to you is Romans 8, verse 28. And I say that because I believe that there is a message in this. And it says, "And we know that all things work together for good to those who love God and to those who are called according to his purpose." The first part of that, and we know that all things work together for good to those who love God. That kind of goes back to me explaining about, this Christians go through hardship like everyone else, but when you really look at them and you study them, they're always happy. They're always preaching about love, kindness, and sure, you might see them get upset, but it's righteous anger, and they always bounce back. They always bounce back, and I'm going to start saying we because we are part of this too. We go through hardship. We go through times where we don't know what to do with it, but we always bounce back. And it just seems like all things work out in the end for those who love God. And the last part of it, to those who are called according to his purpose. I mean, you really don't think that a loving God that loves us so much, that puts so much into who we are and what we are, is just going to let something fly out the window because my Lord is bigger than anything that we could face in this life, even Corona. And us facing this Corona, we have to pull together and we have to look at the Lord for answers. Wow. I really do hope that those 3 verses helped you in your struggle with dealing with bad news. I picked those verses out because I do believe that they have some kind of meaning. Every single verse of the Bible has meaning, but these 3, when I was going through all the verses, I had a lot of other verses down here to go over, a couple from Proverbs that I thought was very useful, but I wanted to stick to these 3 because they've really helped me out. And again, I also want to share something with you that when I typed in, when I started going through stuff, and just for curiosity, I typed in Google, what does the Bible say about receiving bad news? And that was one time, and then another time I typed in, what does the Bible say about receiving bad news about illness? And the one Bible verse that showed up twice on both of those was John 3:16. And I think we already know what that is. But I'm going to read it just because. And I'm bringing it up here so that we can get what the 21st century King James Version says. And this is what it says. "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life." Whew. That is the most quoted Bible verse, and it has meaning to it. It has powerful meaning to it. Wow.
Well, thank you for taking your time listening to today's message, and I hope that somebody was touched with what was said today in the verses that you heard. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below. Don't forget to like this video, and until next time.